Hi, welcome back to the Always Right podcast. I'm author Carissa DeLay,
And
and this is,
Jamie Vendera, author.
and yes, author, publisher, entrepreneur. And yes, we have a special guest today, Mr.
Richard Dalglish. I'm an author and editor.
Yes, he's edited all my books.
He's edited all of mine except for the first two, which are really horrible and they need edited. So, by the way, Rich, you will be doing Raise Your Voice in the Ultimate Breathing Workout soon.
All right. Cool.
Nice. All right, so we are excited to have Rich on today because this is something we've actually, I don't know if Rich, if you've watched any episodes, but we talk about you a lot in good ways.
I have seen some of your episodes, and one in particular where Jamie said something about wanting to kill me, but I'll have to look at that one.
Oh, then let's talk about how I even met you. Because when Daniel Middleton, who does all of our interior design, he's from Scribe Freelance, we started 7-Eleven Press originally together for fiction novels. And the first one was Crisis Artifact, and we had an editor that he had found, and we paid her, and she went through it, and it destroyed the story. I'm reading through it. I'm like, this is just garbage. She's changing things, and I don't like it. So I can't remember if we found you through Lightning Source or how
Craigslist.
Craigslist.
I was looking for work at the time.
Well, you got it.
I'm in the Philadelphia area, and so Craigslist has to be local. But one time, just to see if I could find anything, I went on New York Craigslist, and that's where I saw you had an ad. And I responded to that, and that's how we got started.
Well, with Crisis Artifact, I'm kind of off on the numbers. I don't remember, but I think the book was around 45,000 words. Our concept was short fiction books to read like the time you watch a movie or a TV show. And by the time you got through it, it was like 28,000 words. And you had said something like, they call me the butcher. Oh, I lost it. I'm like, I want to kill this guy. I'm mad. And Daniel said, just read it. And Rich, and if you might recall this, I only found one tiny little scene that I could catch that was going. I didn't miss anything else. It was so tight and it flowed. And it was with Pippa Ray's. She was in apocalyptic New York, and she's walking along a street, and she jumps because a bottle rolls, and it was a cat that hit it. And and I was like, I had to find something to complain because you took out like 20,000 words. I was mad about it. I was like, and you're like, it don't serve the scene. It's cool, but you don't really need it. So I didn't see no reason for it. And then I read it again. I'm like, man, this is good. It was like butter. I mean, it was so smooth. And, before we hop into it, I got to give you praise. You've made me the writer that I am today, which isn't that good because I still use you to edit everything. But
everybody needs to be edited.
Absolutely, because we're too close.
Need to be edited.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a good question. So who edits your work?
Ooh.
Well, I have a publisher. It's Solstice Publishing. It's a very small independent, and they have copy editors. So anything I send them gets edited, and then I get the edited version back, look it over, accept changes, or argue about something. The editor's good though. Like I always have a few too many dialogue tags. He said, she said. They don't all need to be there, so he gets rid of them. It's made me a better writer because I try what I send them to not use so many, but he still goes through and gets rid of more. So anyway, he's good. So my stuff gets edited.
Well, yeah, but what it points out to me is you're a brilliant writer. You're a fantastic editor. We have you do everything, and we send any authors to you. But sometimes you're too close to what you've written. Mm-hmm. And even as a good editor, you may not catch it, and you need an unbiased opinion, some outside eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to edit your own work. You're too close to it. You've seen it a million times. You can slide right over mistakes and never see them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've said that. Like, you definitely need an editor, and you need someone who book edits, not just someone like that is your school teacher that that teaches English. there's a difference
Yep.
with that. But okay, so what got you into editing in the first place?
Well, way back decades ago, I took a job as a proofreader with a small company that did typesetting and composition for scientific medical journals, technical journals. And was a good company. It was successful. It expanded and started offering additional services, publication services, including editing and indexing. I actually learned indexing through a correspondence course sponsored by the Department of Agriculture.
Interesting.
Indexing. It had something to do with the land grant colleges. Anyway, so that got me started. And in 1998, I switched jobs and started working for a business to business magazine that covers the fine jewelry industry called Jeweler's Circular Keystone, better known as JCK. And I was to copy edit 4 smaller sister publications, bi-monthlies. In fact, I was doing managing editor work, not just copy editing, which was fine. And then like 7 months later, they said, okay, you're managing editor now. Got a raise, a new title, same job though. And then eventually I became managing editor of the flagship publication, the monthly. And that managing editor, I did managing and editing. So, and that was, kind of more interesting than some of the technical, medical, scientific stuff. And I mean, we had good writers, we had contributors, and again, everybody needs to be edited. So, and then in 2010, when I got laid off, I went freelance, started advertising on Craigslist or looking on Craigslist to see if anybody else was advertising. How I met.
So we snatched you up like then.
Yeah, 2010.
Okay. I had no idea.
You kept me going for you had work every week for like a year, which was, I needed because, I did not have a quote real job. So anyway, and I'm still doing freelance editing, including for some nonprofit organizations that are connected with the jewelry industry, work I got through contacts from working at JCK magazine.
Yeah, so networking is amazing. I was actually just explaining that to my daughter this morning because we were talking about recording and she's like, how do you know these people? You just know people? I'm like, well, Jamie knows people, then I know people. It's just connections that you learn and you don't burn those. That's why they say don't burn bridges because you never know when you have to cross back that bridge and be like, hey, I might need a little shout out here.
Yeah. Well, I did some work freelance writing for a German publisher that used to publish these great big kind of catalogs that went with a huge jewelry and watch show in Basel, Switzerland. And I got that through somebody I worked with at JCK magazine. So, and they paid really well. So that was nice. But that was writing. That was freelance writing.
But you know what kind of shocks me is everything you're telling me is all nonfiction, technical, scientific. And here you come along, and all we sent you in the beginning was fiction, fiction, fiction. So yeah. To me, it feels like it's a different type of edit. Maybe I'm wrong, but how did you morph into that?
Well, I guess I blame you for morphing into that. You're right. Most of the other editing was nonfiction. And it's a little different, not so much, copy editing, punctuation, spelling, etc., but being aware of kind of how stories work. And, so there is a little bit of a difference. On the other hand, a lot of it is the same.
I would have thought you'd done that forever, though, because, I mean, let's be honest. I'm very ADHD. I put a lot in there. And, of course, we pay you to edit and restructure and check grammar, but your stamp is on all of my books. You see where I've went in a book. You're like, Pym, the knife is kind of cocky, and you may have added a line here or there. I've always given you that free reign. So there is Rich Dalglish. In fact, and I'm not afraid to admit this, you've ghostwritten for me for Order of 5, Season 3 and I plotted out all the stories and gave it to you, and you did a wonderful idea. You kept the same voice in that book. So to me, it seems like that would be harder than technical writing. Maybe I'm wrong, but you came at it like a pro from day one.
Yeah, I guess, being a reader all my life, just like the two of you, I'm sure maybe just had something to do with it. I've been reading fiction since, golden books. So I don't know. But yeah, I really enjoyed writing those episodes for Order of Five. That was fun. And the one, let me remind you of one big change. You had Hart being kind of wimpy, complaining about speeding when they were going to rescue Diamond. Yeah.
Yep.
And I didn't see her as being such a wimp. So I added something or wrote something where she includes a sawed-off shotgun in her medical bag because she was the healer and made sure she got to use it.
Yep. No, I don't even remember that, but I remember that scene. And I was probably playing her down like, I'm a healer, I want to be easy. But really, those kids had it tough. They all had to be fighters.
Yeah, I knew Hart was no wimp, so I gave her a sawed-off shotgun.
I think that's awesome that you can remember those things and reflect back at the character because you remember that character in your head. You're embodying these characters that people are writing. Do you have like a favorite genre that you like to edit per se?
No, I'll edit. I mean, it depends, but I don't necessarily have a favorite genre to edit. As far as what I read a lot of mysteries and police procedurals and private investigator novels and some thrillers, some science fiction and fantasy. So, and even nonfiction, I read. Biographies, history, current events, as we used to say.
Yeah, well, then the next book that you'll be editing for me is a serial killer novel, so that'll be good.
Ooh, cool.
Yes.
When's that due?
June.
Like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know how that goes. All right, looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I've been research wise, one of my friends is a police officer with a state agency, so I get a lot of his feedback on how procedural things might happen in this certain scenarios. So he's full disclosure, knows what's going on in the book. So it's exciting to have someone intel.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah,
technical advisor, like in the movies.
Yes, yes, because sometimes it's like not like the TV shows. It's not that easy. You don't just just happen upon this evidence.
Yeah, I like legal thrillers too. In fact, some of mine,
yep,
became morphed into legal thrillers, fantasy legal thrillers.
I was going to add that. It's who's the one? There was that psychic detective, and they had a show out about him, and there's a series of books.
The guy with the blonde guy from Australia?
No, I mean this was a fiction show. He was a detective, but he was into magic. And there's a whole series of books on this. I can't believe it slipped my mind because I love the show. I haven't read any of the books, but your books kind of remind me of that.
Yeah,
I think of it. We'll put it in the notes later on.
Yeah, I like the legal thriller aspect because the lawyer character, the advocate, has become my favorite character. So he's fun.
That's cool. So, is there a genre that you wouldn't want to edit?
Probably. I can't think offhand what that might be.
Okay, so would you edit erotica?
Well, I probably, it might depend. I don't think I would say no unless it was really, pornographic. If it was, there is a difference.
Oh yeah.
So I always ask for a sample, and I do a free sample edit. So I'd have to see. I mean, I can't say I would accept anything and everything, but I wouldn't necessarily turn that down. But I might, depending. And I don't read romance, even though it's very popular. But doesn't mean I wouldn't edit it if somebody, sent it to me. I'm not familiar with it. I know it has certain tropes and conventions, or it used to anyway, maybe not so much these days. But it would depend. But, in some ways, editing is editing. And excuse me, a lot of it depends on what the client wants. Some people just want real basic copy editing, spelling, punctuation,
Right.
and consistency. And some people want a little bit of language editing, fix awkward constructions. And some people want,
Full.
almost a rewrite, depending. So you have to see what the client wants, and don't want to overdo it if they only want some things. But so you have to kind of work with them.
So if since like a complete rewrite, so let's just say hypothetically, if somebody had to finish season 2 of a Mafia series, but they really didn't like writing it, but they plotted it out and handed that to you, could that be something you could handle?
That's called
If it was plotted out, I think like you guys did with your bullet point list for the Order of Five, maybe, but I remember
Mafiosi.
Yeah.
Oh, hypothetically.
Yeah.
Asking for a friend.
For a friend.
Yeah, I didn't feel comfortable or knowledgeable enough, maybe, to actually write those. Perhaps with an outline that would probably make a difference.
That's the one. And Daniel, if you're watching this, I'm telling you now, it's the one regret I had. He got so busy that he's like, "Love you, you helped me." Because the same thing with him, he quit doing interior design, and then he had reached out to people in the past, and I said, "Yeah, I got a ton of work for you." And just like you said, I was giving him, like with you, I gave him so much work. He said, "Man, you really, really helped me out." And Mafiosi was kind of his brainchild, and he took point on that. We kind of discussed it, but I didn't have as much hand in that, just like he didn't have as much hand in like Order 5 Rage of the Sigil at the time. So that's the one area I'm a little weak in, but I still really want to finish that series. So we shall be discussing.
That'd be something that would be nice to have Rich's take on that, since he likes legal stuff, and it's kind of like that dark, underground crime stuff going on.
That'll be the last book that I do to finish all the books I have to do.
You'll do Age of the Sigil first, which I know that you've been doing, so that's good.
I was working on it this morning.
Age of the Sigil.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I love the Order of Five.
Yep. Those two are my favorite series.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the others. I like Crisis and the apocalyptic stuff like the Werecats. But something about Order and Sigil, I just like that magic number, those teenagers doing their thing.
Yeah, great characters, I think, is, really, you can really kind of empathize with them and root for them. And, good characters, good stories.
So, okay, now, for our listeners, and we have a lot of authors that will listen, and especially the one that you spoke with, Willow, she listens all the time to the episodes and kind of pulls from that. And it's like, oh, I gotta change this now, because what you guys were saying that was helpful. And I know you've recently worked with her as far as with a few of her sample chapters.
Right.
But can you explain to our readers the show don't tell?
Yeah, I mean, some people overdo or overthink showing versus telling, and you hear people say, "Oh, you can never tell; you always have to show." Well, that's not true. Novels consist of both showing and telling, and some people, when they think of showing versus telling, are really talking about using lively language to kind of paint a picture rather than straightforward language. And you have to show, and here's how you do it, and they'll write something sometimes elaborate or a little overdone. But really what we're talking about with showing versus telling is what you can also call scene versus summary. Showing means having a scene with characters doing something, characters being on stage. It's the difference between a movie scene where something's happening and a camera showing, a sky or a landscape and a voiceover narration. So that's really the point. And the key is writing scenes, actually literally showing readers what's going on. Characters
Mhm.
are there and engaging in some activity. It could be even just dialogue, just talking to somebody else. Even thinking, interior monologue, it counts as showing if it's done well. And telling is the narrator, whether it's first person or third person narration, just filling in information, some backstory, some preliminary stuff. Sometimes a scene or a chapter will open with some telling, some background, and then go into an actual scene with characters doing talking. And it's a balance, but all novels have both. The idea that you can never tell is just wrong.
Right. Yeah, I
You
would
just
agree.
have to know when to do it, when it's appropriate. And sometimes you don't want a scene because it wouldn't be that interesting. It's better to fill in information by telling readers something and then go into having characters on stage interacting, etc., or doing something, uh, whatever it might be. So that's basically it. Think of scene versus summary. That's I think even a better way to think of showing versus telling.
Well, if that's the case, then I think way back when I used to summarize a lot, and he would get on me about it, because I remember even Daniel or something said, "Listen, you gotta listen to him. You gotta show more. Quit telling. They don't need to know every inch of the room and the shape. And there's 4 chairs in there, and one's a red, blue, green." And I'm like, okay. So it was tough for me in the beginning, but I listened.
Well, it is tough though. I mean, I not to sound negative, but the thing about writing a novel or novellas, there's so much to it. You have to get every aspect of it right. What you're talking about, the dialogue, conflict, tension, and suspense, introducing that, sustaining it, how to open so that people are immediately interested. I mean, there's a lot that can go wrong when you're right. And the thing is, you get one thing wrong and you might lose readers.
Hmm.
Everything else might be great, but you get one boring scene or one uh,
Overly
something
overly
that's
described
not
scenes,
believable. Pardon?
even overly described scenes can lose a reader, I feel like. You I have found, because I've learned a lot from writing and having you edit, but I have learned the adjustments as far as like the show don't tell, but a lot of the things I've learned from you have to do with overly taking my characters and using words that are a little bit more descriptive, but not as like she did this, he did that, but understanding like the flow better is what I feel like I've learned from you from my feedback is like just learning the proper way to combine conversations and to think as if you this isn't how your character would naturally think. This is not the flow of how you would see things. I've learned that. So now when I'm writing this new book, I find myself saying, okay, naturally if they're thinking in their head, they're not going to say I am. They're going to just think
I'm
something because they are no,
Yeah.
they're just gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, this sucks." They're gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like this sucks." They're not gonna do that. It's not a natural when you're thinking to yourself how you're gonna. So I've learned that, and when you're having conversation, naturally, when two people are having a conversation, sometimes they don't have to readdress each other because for the fact they know who each other is. You know?
That was a tough one for me. And I would do that all the time. And Rich, it was a lot like if two characters were having a conversation, I felt like I always had to say, this one said, this one responded,
Mhm.
this one, back and forth. And he's like, no, you don't need to do that. People, they know their characters, they know who's speaking when you get
Mhm.
into that dialogue.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's what I was saying about my copy editor deleting those dialogue tags that don't need to be there. You need to have them sometimes, but if it's two people having a
Hmm.
dialogue, you don't need he said, she said every
Yes.
single time.
Yeah.
Now, if
And
you
I
have
learned
three
that from you as
people,
well. Yeah.
If you have 3 people, it's tougher. Then you have to get tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you, there was something, oh, your books. So you mentioned how you became a writer and stuff. So, and the types of things you write. But what are some of the things that you've recently written or that you're working on for your own bookshelf of your own stuff?
Well, I just had a release in April,
Mhm.
just a few weeks ago. It's part of the series that started with my second published book. It's fantasy detective mysteries with sometimes legal thriller, same characters. And so the one that I just released is called, I don't know if you can see this, The Older's Plot. It looks like it's
Okay,
flopped.
yeah.
So,
Oh, a very mysterious cover. I like that.
Do you have the other covers near you?
gee, how did you guess? Anyway, but we'll show them later. It's called The Older's Plot, and the character Calandrio Blood, who's uh, a defense advocate. He's a lawyer. I don't use the term lawyer. I use advocate, and he's a bit of a wild man, especially in court. Trials are so much fun in these stories because they're similar enough to what we know to be actual trial procedure, but they're a little more raucous and fun. And he insults the judge and the other.
What's the setting of those books? Is it something that's like normal to like everyday life now, or a different planet, or a different
It's
dimension? Or
it's medieval-esque fantasy, swords and horses, um, and but there are trials. There's a legal system,
Mhm.
and so he's Calandrio is, as I said, defends people. He usually defends the downtrodden and the abused, and he almost never gets paid, and he loses most of his cases because most of his clients are guilty. But but this one is more of it gets to be kind of a thriller. There are some courtroom scenes. He's defending somebody who doesn't like him, who's the main character in some of the previous books, and but he's been falsely accused, and Calandrio thinks, well, this is ridiculous. No jury's going to believe this, so he's going to defend him. And there are some trial scenes, but then the older, who's kind of a cult leader, is out of his mind. He's a madman. He wants to take control, and so he tries to snatch the defendant who Calandrio is defending. Jarn is his name. So he has to escape with the help of my other favorite character, the sorceress Astel. And there's some big plot, and we don't know what it is till the very end. And it's pretty dire. And then they have to figure it out, try to prevent it, etc. So I like
That's-
it.
so do you have, so this is, now we're talking to you as an author. Do you have a storyboard you plot out so all of your books, the last part of the series? How do you work through your storyboards?
Well, I don't have storyboards. I usually get an idea, and I know enough to start writing. I know how it's going to begin. I know how it will end, although things can change. And I just start writing. For one book, I was determined to do an outline, and I
Hmm.
was going to do scene by scene. So I had, like one or two sentences. Scene one, this happened. Scene two,
Hmm.
that happened. I got to about 20 bullet points, and then I had to start writing to figure out what was going to happen next, because that
Hmm.
was it. That was as far as I could go without actually sitting down and doing the writing, which is this very mysterious process where somehow the act of actually doing the writing sparks ideas. I'm sure you guys know all
Oh
about
yeah.
that. And so I've never completely outlined anything. Some a little more than others, but I do know the beginning, the end, some of the middle, and then I just start writing.
The only thing I mean, nonfiction, I plot everything out, and I tell aspiring authors do the same. The only fiction book I've ever plotted out was Order of Five, Season 3. I just can't do it. I have an idea for sigil, for whatever, basic over idea, and I start writing it like I'm watching a new movie I've never seen before, and it just starts rolling. And that's when I take down any bullet points that would come to me, but I never know where it's going to go, even until I get to the end.
I did that with Four Rivers, because I was actively, Rich was editing Crystal Gate, and I was actively writing the second book in the series at the same time. So, because I just wanted to take right off. And so I'm like writing what I had, but then I was like, okay, but I wanted this to happen. So I'll write them down, but I'll rearrange them. Like, these are the things I know I want to happen. I'm not sure of the order. And then like fill in between. And that's what's going on with Canvas is I sat down, oh my gosh, like 10 years ago with Canvas, I think, and wrote like 8 chapters. And then sat it down, worked on my nonfiction book. Now I have probably 22 chapters in my Grammarly settings, all itemized by individual chapters. But I had that all written down. I'm like, the flow between the first chapter and the second chapter, there's something missing. And I just wrote a brand new chapter last week, and just because I knew something had to be happening. So I had basically an outline, but then I filled in between. Like, oh, I need a small little, because the very first chapter is super dark and mysterious, like, and leaves you like, and then you're like, okay, I feel this, but I can't do that in the second chapter because I feel like I need my reader to go like this and be like, no, I need to know what's going on for this first chapter. So I got to kind of bring them through. So yeah, I do the outline, but then I write at the same time. So I feel you when it comes to, I just got to get this down.
Rich, I want to know, because when did your first book come out? In the last 10 years, I'm thinking.
Let me check. 2016.
So
for this one.
Yes.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, I love that cover. What inspired you? I mean, you were an editor. What made you say, okay, I'm going to start writing?
I actually started writing fiction as a collaborative project way back. I had a friend I worked with who wrote fiction, I discovered, and he had an idea which he showed me, and I thought, okay, that's pretty good. So, I kind of added some ideas to it. And then he kind of lost interest, and but I wanted to see if I could actually write a novel, actually finish a lengthy work, because it always seemed impossible to me. How do people do that? How do you write 350, 450 pages and sustain it? Anyway, so I did. I managed to finish it, and it's unpublishable. So it's never been published. But it was worth doing. I think of it as kind of a self-taught seminar in novel writing, even though it will never be published. There's a lot in it that I really like. It's not a total disaster, but it's not good enough to be published. But it taught me a lot, as I say, a self-taught seminar. And and once I realized, yeah, I can do this, maybe I can do another one. You get an idea and you run with it. And that was this one, Day of the Facile. I had kind of 2 big ideas. Don't know where they came from. You know how that works. Sometimes they pop into your head. One idea was a small group of people who had no memories. They all had amnesia. Again, this is medieval-esque fantasy setting. And they encounter one another early on, and they know they're connected because they have rings that have the same insignia. So they figure out, well, we don't know who we are. We have no memories, but we got to be connected somehow. Same family, whatever. So that was one idea. And then another idea was, okay, it's called Day of the Facile, Fastle. The idea of what I called a facile pledge. Some evil sorcerer guy, we don't know he's a sorcerer, persuades the king of some little realm that he should have his subjects sign facile pledges to kind of renew their loyalty to the king. But when you sign, you become a thrall of this dark sorcerer, the Ordseer. So that was kind of 2 big ideas. I had to kind of figure out how to put them together, but that was the first book. And then I had another idea with different characters, and that went. I wasn't satisfied with it, but it kind of other ideas sprang from that with the same characters. So that was my second book, the first in the series. This one, which you have to read backwards, The Grenling Abduction, and that is literally a fantasy police procedural about a missing person case. Uh, Eventually, that first one that I wasn't happy with, I made big changes, still wasn't happy with it. This goes back decades. Made big changes, still wasn't happy with it. Picked it up years later, made more big changes, still wasn't happy with it. Finally, I made more big changes and thought, okay, now I like it. And that now serves as a kind of a prequel to the series that is here somewhere. This one.
Oh yes, I've seen this one on.
So that should have been the first book, but I couldn't figure out how to make it any good until decades later. So that's why it's a bit of a prequel.
But now you're hooked, and you'll continue to write.
If I get an idea, like I just got,
or if he gets some kind of outline to start ghostwriting for certain people.
Yeah.
That's always a possibility.
I got like 9 Spitfire books to finish, The Sigil, Siren 2, RNA.
At this point, Jamie, you should just hand him Mafiosa and say, what would you do with this?
Yeah, I don't even know where to start. I need to pick Daniel's brain because he had to plot it out. He's like, oh, this is what I want to do. And actually, he had 3 books. We have the second cover. I was like, I think I just ended on book 2. We shall see.
Yeah. We'll just have to ask Daniel about that. Well, Rich, we are so excited that you got to come on finally, and we got to talk to you. Yes. And so we look forward to down the road, like maybe talking to you about some of even your books that come out. Feel free to like say, hey, I got a book coming out. We'll get on here. You can tell us about it and share it with everybody. That'd be cool.
But for now, how can they find you? Yeah. Tell us, like, you know, if they want you for editing, if they want to read your books, what's the best way to find you?
Well, I have an Amazon author page. So it's my name, and I have a Facebook author page, Richard Dalglish, author. So, and I post some things on there. I actually posted a series of articles about fiction writing, novel writing in particular, on my Facebook author page. I'm on Instagram, and I'm not that great at social media.
I hate doing it, but
yeah, you have to.
It's a part of it.
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook as me, and my author page, Instagram, Twitter. What else? What other social media is there? I guess that's about
Twitter, maybe Threads, YouTube. That's what you need to do, a YouTube series on your I mean, do you have 2 Facebook pages or just your main one?
No, I have 2. I have, my own page, and then I started an author page. So I assumed that was a page, but now I'm finding out it isn't. So
well, I'm trying to find it.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it, and it's not popping up.
Yeah. Get all the L's in my last name.
Boom. There we go.
I have all the L's.
Yep, it's right there.
Yeah, Richard Dalglish, author.
Yep.
Author. And I'm on Facebook groups with that as Richard Dalglish, author, not only as my main page.
Yeah, this is a page. It is definitely a page.
Yeah, it was just a little bit more, it was challenging to find.
I think with Thuyus, because he has author on his main page too. I was like, wait a minute, I know I'm following him because I've read some of your tips, some of your articles. I was like, yep, I've learned some of this stuff from this man.
Do you think I should do that on YouTube? Just read them?
Oh, I think you should. You know what? And we'd be more than happy, even if you want to launch and talk about it, we'd love to have you back on to discuss some of those tips, and then we can lead them to your YouTube page. But absolutely, share your knowledge.
Actually, go ahead. Sorry.
You go ahead.
Well, whenever I edit this episode, I will go through, and when I load it to YouTube, at the very end, I have 3 spaces. One is Jamie's, like his voice stuff. The other one's one of the episodes I did on YouTube on like the torsion energy. But I can put a third one in there, and I can connect your YouTube channel to that. So that way, when we have your episode on there, we can put that in there.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
I'll have to get a YouTube
Oh,
page.
I'm actually following you on your Rich page. I was already following that one.
You went right over her head. So
Did. Listen, Linda. All right, perfect. All right. So thank you, Rich, again for coming on. And for those of you who are, yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for our listeners and anybody that's interested in reaching out to Rich. Like he said, he's got his social media pages. We'll link that in the podcast episode notes as well. If you want to find him, we have we'll have his email where you can reach out to him as well on there. But if you want to reach out to us, you know to go to alwaysrightpodcast.com. And you can click on any of those icons, and you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Twitter, even though we don't tweet, or X, whatever you want to call it. You can also reach out if you are not sure how to get a hold of Rich. You can also reach out to us at our email, alwaysrightpodcast@gmail.com, and we can give you his information that way. If you have questions for future episodes or anything like that, we can also give you feedback. So, as always, I'm author Carissa DeLay, and this is my co-host,
author Jamie Vendera.
And Rich, you want to sign off and say whatever?
Yeah, Richard Dalglish, author. Buy some of my books.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
That's what we all say, right? Buy our books. All right. Thanks again, and always right.